guys, welcome back to Strong Successful Mail. So for today, I'm going to go over an email that was sent from a subscriber. This is from a guy, I believe he's probably in his early 60s or so, and he shares his story that goes back some 40 years or so when he was younger, and about a good friend of his, from his childhood who's no longer his friend. You see, this is really a cautionary tale of how his friend gave up him and all the other close buddies of his over a girl. A girl in college who was a gold digger saw this guy's earning potential and milked it for everything he's worth and completely cut off all these guys. Well, to no surprise, 40-some years later now, guess what? The gold digger does to him what gold diggers do best when the money train stops flowing in. And I thought it'd be a really good one to go over here, guys, making the point, multiple things here. While you never give up your best friends, your brothers, who are like your family, for some girl. You can't replace good, loyal friends. The problem is so many guys will do that over the first girl that pays attention to them, that's remotely attractive, gives them a little tail, that type of thing. They throw it all away. You never do that. Another lesson is about gold diggers, how they will search for the guy who's going to be a good earner. And then when he no longer can bring in that type of money, he loses his job, something happens to him, he retires, boom, they're no longer interested. You must understand this, guys, because so many guys fall into this trap. So, starts off, says here, Dear SSM, this is a story about a person I grew up with, whom we will call Mike, and his wife, whom we will call Peg. I write this to you as an example of the dangers of making a complete stranger the sole purpose of your existence and rejecting everyone else who have proven themselves loyal to you over long periods of time. And I might add, the third important thing of the story, guys, is making a woman your sole purpose in life. You never do that. Well, Mike and I grew up together in a small town and were very close friends. In fact, I consider him closer to me than my own brother. Since Mike was a few years older than me, he graduated high school before I did and then went off to attend a large university where he majored in engineering. There he met Peg. She had grown up in an exclusive area and was from an upper-class family, but was just of average looks and therefore would not be attracting any Chads or Tyrones, but unfortunately, she did attract Mike. Okay, there you go. She grew up with a silver spoon. She's looking for a certain type of guy to provide the lifestyle she's accustomed to. But she can't get those type of guys from her background because she's not good looking enough for them. But she can get this guy who obviously she could probably tell didn't have a lot of experience with women. Remember, guys, they can search the room like the Terminator to find that nice guy. Well, he fell for her immediately. And she practically took over his life. Well, smack to Mike. Never do that. She told him where he could go, how long he could be there, what he could do, and most importantly, who he could associate with. Once again, I think I can all join in with all you guys right now and smack to Mike. Does that sound like a man you guys want to be? Where your girl tells you who you can hang out with, where you're going to go, all that crap? No. Do you think a woman's going to love a guy like that? No. They're going to see him as a freaking joke, but they'll be happy to milk you for it. Well, naturally, being from an upper-class area, she did not approve of most of us, his friends, from our small town, and after meeting Peg, he would have very little to do with us. What a freaking moron. You're bros. We tried to make him see what she was doing to his life, but he would only tell us that what he and Peg had was so special and so different than what he saw in other people's relationships. So special, she's telling you to give up all your good friends who are loyal to you. She's telling you what to do, where to go, what to think, how to dress, everything else. That's special. Fucking idiot. When he married her, while he was still in college, most of us, especially me, did not receive invitations. The ceremony was for members only. And you know what, guys? Situation like this, I'm sure a lot of you guys are just want to throw something. Mike deserves whatever comes his way. You just don't do that. That was about the last most of us ever saw Mike, and we all moved on with our lives. Though occasionally I would see something that would remind me of him. There was a scene in the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off where Ferris breaks the fourth wall and speaks to the camera about what he envisioned happening to his best friend Cameron and when Cameron attended college. Of course, that's exactly what happened to Mike. How often art imitates life. So, for you guys that saw Ferris Bueller's Day Off, I bet you know the scene that he's referring to. And I'm actually going to, as best I can, repeat what Ferris Bueller says to the fourth wall, to the audience, about Cameron. If you don't know who Ferris Bueller is, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, watch the movie. It's a classic. It's like fucking 40 years old. It's great. Ferris Bueller was the most popular kid in school, but for some reason he has the best friend Cameron, who's a total dork. But I respect his loyalty. And what he says about Cameron's potential future, if Cameron doesn't kind of get his shit together, is referring to him about what happens when he meets the first woman. And this is what Ferris says, as best I can remember. He says, Cameron has never been in love, but no one has actually been in love with him. If things don't change for him, Cameron is going to marry the first girl he lays, and she's going to treat him like shit, because she will have given him what he's brought up in his mind to be the end-all be-all of human existence. She won't respect him, because you can't respect someone who kisses your ass. It just doesn't work. There, I think I covered it pretty well, and you guys can probably watch that clip on YouTube and see if I got it right. The point of the whole thing is, just like Cameron in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which he envisioned for Cameron if he didn't change and grow a fucking spine and get some self-confidence, same thing here. First girl that pays attention to this guy and gives him and sleeps with him, boom, he's going to kiss her ass and all that, and look what happened. Well, let's see what happens to this guy years later. He says here, of course, that's exactly what happened to Mike. How often art imitates life. When I later saw the movie Saving Silverman, I thought that's what a bunch of us should have done for Mike, and that's the movie that could have used the line based on a true story. Like I said, most of us never saw Mike again, but about a year ago, a social media feed I was browsing showed a list of people that thought I would like to know, and there was Peg. Only her surname was her maiden name and not Mike's. How could that be? If Mike was such a great catch to her and a provider, why would they be divorced? Did Mike finally see his way after all these years? Well, I clicked on it and saw that she listed her status as single. Thinking that Mike may have died, I did some online research and discovered he was very much alive, so it was pretty obvious that they were no longer together. The story would have ended there, but by the strangest coincidence, a few months later, one of our old group of friends ran to Mike, and they spent an hour catching up. Let me tell you, SSM, the story was not a happy one. He had graduated college with an engineering degree, and he made a very good living as an engineer, but no matter what he tried to do to please Peg, she was never satisfied. Because gold diggers are never satisfied. But more importantly, a woman who is with a guy who's total weakling and spineless and kisses her butt because she's given him what he brought up in his mind to be the end-all be-all of human existence, and ain't going to be happy. And by the way, most women you can't ever truly make happy. Additionally, the longer that they were married, the more controlling she became. And he said he didn't know how miserable he was until they were finally divorced. He brought this on himself. I don't feel bad for him. All you guys were there. His bros, he threw you all away. Even when you tried to help him, when you tried to tell him about her. I know you didn't go full Saving Silverman on her and him, but still you tried to help. He said when he finally retired, it was like their marriage dried up overnight, and he didn't even know her after that. Their marital relations dwindled, and the last year of marriage, they were sleeping in separate bedrooms. When she finally demanded a divorce, he was almost relieved, even though he ended up being forced to pay crazy amounts of alimony and had to return to the workforce after several years of retirement. Right there. After all those years, probably 40 years, he was no longer of use to her. And she took him, and I bet you all those years they were married, she probably was spending like crazy. Lord knows what. I'm sure if she was remotely attractive for her age, was probably hooking up with somebody else. You know? This is tragic. It's so unfortunate. And this happens to a lot of guys out there. But I don't feel bad for him because, again, what he did to you guys. Also, the coup de grace to his marital suffering was when he discovered that she had left him for, wait for it, another woman. Do you think that other woman just magically appeared in that moment after he retired? She's probably been there all along. Mike's entire story was so predictable that even though it's sad, it wasn't at all surprising. When our old group of friends first laid eyes on Peg, it was obvious she was nothing but a gold-digging snob who only valued Mike for his earning potential. See, you guys were R-pilled back then. You didn't even, before there was such a thing as the R-pill. Of course, you can't tell that to a young man in love, though a few of us tried, which made Mike furious and wouldn't speak to us afterwards. So you tried. I know you tried, obviously, but right there again, you made it clear you tried to talk to him. How many of you guys watching this have at least one friend? Kind of similar situation. Wrong girl, all that. You try to talk to him, and you're the bad guy. He was nothing but a virtual cash cow to her, and when he retired and the money stopped flowing in, as if it had when he was unemployed as an engineer, she cast him aside like so much spent garbage. As I said, all of us have moved on with our lives, and because the only friends Peg allowed Mike to have were her friends, he was left quite alone. Because they were married for a very long time, the huge amounts of alimony he is forced to pay has also left him relatively impoverished, and he'll be paying that alimony for the remainder of his life. I don't want this to happen to any man, and it's criminal in my opinion that a guy would have to pay the rest of his life, and you know how this goes. That shouldn't happen at all. That's absurd. And by the way, do you think she ever worked? I don't think so. And I'm not hearing anything about kids either, but fine. But do I feel bad for him personally, given his actions, how stupid he was, and made you guys out to be the bad guys? No. I know it sounds callous to say, but I feel bad. I feel bad, but not sorry for him. We'd all been close, super close friends, and the speed and suddenness of his turning on most of us left everyone both stunned and embittered towards him. Dude, nobody can blame you. Furthermore, I can be so bold to say his remaining in such a miserable arrangement for so many years was actually his fault. It was his fault. Did that guy ever stand up for himself? Clearly not. You know? I mean, do you think that they regularly hooked up? Do you think she was remotely pleasant to be around? No, but he was too fucking weak. He should have realized the situation long ago and cut his losses rather than remain where he was and now have to literally pay for the remainder of his life. Considering the sad and almost tragic end of Mike's story, I wanted to pass it along as a warning to others about the dangers of betraying your lifelong friends for a complete stranger you just met and who, in this case, possess extremely ulterior motives. Sincerely, a late-blooming old man. There you go, guys. A tragedy. And it's a tragedy that would happen that happens to any guy. Think about, not only being taken advantage of and used, and manipulated and tricked and all that, but then in the end, the court's saying, even though you provided her, you were with her all these years, and now you got to pay for her the rest of your life, and she enjoyed what you provided, I guarantee you she didn't have a job, and I don't know anything about kids in this situation, but for him personally, what he did to his bros, lifelong friends, cutting him off just like that, just for some chick, when there's billions of them out there, and he obviously was a high-earning guy, and I was probably a good guy to that point. Could have gotten other ones. Nope. This was the fear that Ferris Bueller had for cameras. That was a good mentioning of that movie. But you know what? He brought this on himself. And the only thing that guy can do now in his 60s, he's going to go back to work. But at least he's free. He's on his own. He no longer has her. But it's going to be a tough road. And just imagine that your whole life looking back and getting dumped like that. And knowing that you've been used and having to come to terms with that, you know? But that's his life to live, and that's what he has to deal with. End of story. But for all you guys out there, and you're younger in particular, the lesson is here. There are gold diggers out there. There are women, as you're well aware, that are deliberately looking for guys, weaklings, morons, to take advantage of. And will manipulate a guy to cut off his friends, cut off his family, all the things that makes him happy, because for some reason he feels he has to have a woman in his life, that he maybe wants to get a little pussy, when guess what, he could probably get under much better circumstances in other ways. Don't be that guy. Don't let your friends be that guy. And guys, there's also a point, remember, that if you have a guy that you're friends with, whatever, that does this, and cuts you off, well, there's a point that you say your piece, and if he cuts you off, it's on his own. And this guy right here. So beware, guys. Beware this can happen. Beware this can happen to your friends. And this is why it's important that all guys hear stories like this from time to time, or more importantly, quite often, to help them be aware of what can happen out there on both sides of the situation, so that it doesn't become you or someone you care about. So, sir, I appreciate you sending in the story. I don't feel bad for him, but then again, that's just me. All right, guys, that's it for today. Be sure to comment down below. Let me know what you think about this. Let's hear it, guys, in the comments section. Do you know anybody else that's like this? I'm sure most of you know at least one guy in varying degrees is like this. I'd like to hear about it. How did it end for them? And be sure to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe. I'll catch you next time.